Good evening, I'm Ryan Bass in for Mike Mickle. It's the end of the shuttle era. After 30 years, the last NASA space shuttle has completed its final mission.
It's been an unbelievable journey on a magnificent flying machine.
After almost 2 weeks in space, Atlantis returns to Earth for the final time, capping off NASA's 30-year shuttle program. Favorable weather conditions caused the crew to schedule a touchdown in the early hours, despite some desires to have the historical landing take place during the day. It was an emotional morning for those on board and those at Mission Control.
Today is also a moment in the history books. Those books will talk about the amazing work of the flight control teams over the past 30 years. The work done in this room and this building will never again be duplicated.
Flying in space is a real dream, but flying in space, it has a lot more to do with who you do it with than what you do. And these three folks, Rex and Sandy and Doug, I'll tell you, if a commander couldn't ask for three better people to go and perform an aggressive and to a certain extent historic mission.
A team of Gainesville, Florida doctors were in attendance for the landing. Their job, well, to give astronauts a checkup when they arrive back on Earth. Photojournalist Patrick Fleming from our affiliate GTN shows us how the head of the elite team is reflecting on the final trip to the Space Center.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
I actually started in the aftermath of the Challenger accident as part of the analysis of and the debrief of that disaster. One of the contingencies was that there was a survivable accident on a launcher landing. I'm the medical director for the NASA medical support teams. We'll go down tonight. We'll leave shortly after midnight and make sure we're there 2 or 3 hours before the scheduled landing. And then we will actually deploy from a medical center on Kennedy Space Center. We'll actually deploy to an area in our convoy right off of the landing strip in the runway at Kennedy Space Center. We'll wait for the shuttle to arrive, and then we will move actually out onto the runway and the tarmac and set up our triage site there in the on the runway. It's going to be kind of one of those bittersweet moments where you're really glad that the crew has made it down with a successful mission and made it down safely. And it's just been a real honor to have been involved in the shuttle program.
NASA's focus now shifts to deep space exploration. They will be leaving the job of ferrying astronauts to and from the International Space Station to some private companies. A cold front will soon provide much needed relief to the Midwest, but that's bad news for the Northeast as the dome of hot air is moving towards the East Coast. The weather this week has been deadly. 13 deaths are blamed on the heat in just the Midwest alone. And since last Friday, the weather has set at least 221 records. In Minnesota, the heat index hit 134 degrees earlier in the week. Blistering heat buckled I-380 in Iowa. Well, as for Oklahoma City, the extreme heat caused 8 water main breaks. And across the Northeast, extreme temperatures are just beginning to set in. And many jobs, well, they don't get a break from the heat, especially if you're a roofer.
Job like this, no trees, right exposed to the sun. You just got to take it slow and drink lots of water.
New York City is expecting 100-degree weather by tomorrow. Firefighters also have no choice but to work in the heat, let alone rescue people from the heat. Firefighters had to battle a fire at home in Omaha last night. With high temperatures and more than 60 pounds of gear, it can be a challenge just to try and keep cool.
The main goal is to get the job done and take care of the people's property or the people if it's a medical call, and then we're kind of secondary to that. So we make sure the job's done. We don't really think about us until after the fact, but then we come back and we make sure we get cooled off, get rehydrated again, get ready for the next one. So.
Now, the department says it rotates firefighters for every 15 minutes to make sure they're staying hydrated and also are staying cool. Severe drought is taxing the state of Texas, and that could eventually cost you more. Brian Latham has that and more as we get back to business.
Ranchers are rushing to sell off cattle as dry weather plagues Texas. High temperatures and drought conditions have caused the price of hay to rise and watering holes to dry up. Experts say some ranchers likely won't be able to stay in business after the drought, which will likely result in higher beef prices. Auctioneers say they have about twice the number of cows coming to auction right now. Here's some good news for airline passengers who are uncomfortable going through revealing full body scans. The TSA is installing new software on the machines. The upgrade will show just a generic outline of a person instead of the specific passenger's full image. And passengers will be able to see the same outline the TSA agent sees. There are currently about 500 scanners at 78 airports in the U.S., and more units will be deployed this year. American Airlines announced this morning it plans to buy 460 jets. That's the largest commercial aircraft order in history. The $37 billion deal will be split between Boeing and Airbus.
American is trying to create the youngest and most fuel-efficient fleet among U.S. carriers. For Back to Business, I'm Brian Latham.
Could snail mail get even slower? Well, get ready, because that could actually be the case. In the future, the mailman might only come on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Postmaster General tells USA Today he predicts within 15 years, mail service will be reduced to 3 days a week. The cutbacks, he says, may be needed because of budget concerns and fewer people using the postal service. This isn't necessarily the storybook ending Borders had hoped for. Today, a judge approved the closure of the company's remaining 400 stores. Shannon Moore from our Reno, Nevada affiliate KRXI looks at how closures will affect the city.
Customers were disappointed today to hear of the South Virginia stores likely closing.
It just really sucks.
I hate to see it leave. I love this place.
In a statement, Borders president said ebooks and the economy were partly to blame for the company's current state. News that didn't seem to surprise many shoppers.
Everything's so digital, and you can get anything you want online cheaper than here usually.
Those changes may mean more challenges for smaller, locally owned bookstores like this one.
Zephyr Books is a family-owned shop that's been in business for almost 5 years. Owner Ivy Johnson says they're worried about the ebook running them out of business too.
And that's a huge concern for us.
The store is a labor of love for Johnson and her husband, but it barely pays the bills now.
If the new ebook takes away the hard copy, then we're going to have to do something else.
While popularity seems to be growing, not all shoppers are fans of the electronic craze, giving hope for stores like Zephyr's.
Actually, I like the smell and the feel of old books and the thumb through them, and I'm not really fond of the Kindles and the, I don't know, what the Nooks.
Shannon Moore reporting for INN News.
It's time for Your Vote 2012, and it's been a headache of a week for frontrunner Republican candidate Michelle Bachmann, literally.
I prescribe medication that I take on occasion whenever symptoms arise, and they keep my migraines under control. But I'd like to be abundantly clear. My ability to function effectively will not affect my ability to serve as Commander-in-Chief.
Bachmann defended herself after news of her migraines hit the press. Her doctor says she takes 2 medications to control the headaches when they do occur. One of Bachmann's opponents, well, he's weighing in.
If you're going to be president of the United States, you got to be able to do the job every day, all the time. There's no real time off in that job.
Bachmann's doctor says she is, quote, overall in good general health.
Time for Global News Now. Apparently, even the President of the United States isn't exempt from traffic fines in London. During a visit in May, President Obama failed to pay London's $16 congestion fee for his limo, which is nicknamed the Beast. So, London has slapped the president with a $200 fine. London levies the congestion charge to try and keep the streets clear during the work week. There's been a major halt in Afghanistan's drug trafficking trade. Nearly 500,000 pounds of opium poppy seeds were confiscated during a joint raid by NATO and Afghan national security forces. The fine represents the largest uncovered by any Afghan and coalition forces this year. The opium poppy seeds can be used to make heroin as well as other drugs. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, but exactly how tall? Well, that's up for debate. The government of Nepal has announced plans to remeasure the peak to settle a long-running dispute with China. China says the mountain that spans the borders of both countries should be measured by its rock height. Nepal says it should be measured by its snow height. The official height of the Mount Everest is currently designated as 29,029 feet. And that's your Global News Now.
If you have flower beds, you spend a lot of time doing them. That's pulling weeds, of course. If this chore is getting to be too much for you, D. Armstrong has a fix for your growing frustration. And baby dolls that cry, wet their diaper, and now breastfeed? A controversy rocking the toy world, that's coming up.